Welcome to Cross Border Interviews, the online show where we dive into the insights of municipal political leaders from across Canada. Our mission on the show is quite simple: shine a light on the dedicated individuals who day in and day out work around the council table to shape the communities that they call home. And joining us for today's episode is from the city of Parksville, British Columbia, Councillor Sean Wood. Parksville is an active community with families, with young children, urban professionals, retirees, longtime residents, and new arrivals who have chosen to live in the community for the quality of life, the region's natural environment, and its amenities. Parksville is a great place to live, to work, and to play. Parksville temperature climate allows visitors and residents to enjoy a variety of outdoor activities year-round, such as golf, hiking, mountain biking, and windsurfing. Parksville has been also called Canada's Riviera, with good reason. Few beaches outside Mexico and the Caribbean compare with Parkville's kilometers of near perfect sandy beaches at the Parkville's Bay and the Rathtrevor Beach Provincial Park. Are you looking for a team of experienced professionals to help develop a strategic plan for your municipality? Look no further. At Strategic Steps, their team of experts has years of experience working in municipal administration. They take a comprehensive approach to planning, carefully listening to your community's needs, and working closely with your council to develop a homegrown strategy tailored to your unique community. Contact Strategic Steps today to learn more about how they can help you create a brighter future for your community. Call Strategic Steps at 780-416-9255 or visit strategicsteps.ca to get started. Counselor, thank you so much for sitting down with me this morning and talking about yourself and talking about the great city of Parksville. I want to start by talking about you, though, for a little bit, if you don't mind. And I want to get to know the man behind the persona by asking the simple question that I've asked every other person who's ever come on the show, so you're no exception. Where'd your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Sean?
Sure, Chris. That's a great question. Well, we all try to live together. We try to, pay bills together and get infrastructure together, schools, fire departments, police. We're all on the same team, sort of. So I started probably working within the community when I volunteered for the Parksville Volunteer Fire Department. And so I spent 5 years there. And that was probably, I guess, my first baptism into serving the public.
Did you ever have an interest in becoming a politician? Was that something you thought you were going to be growing up? Like myself, I had pictures of Mike Harris, Bob Rae, Prime Minister Campbell on my wall. Were you that nerd, or was politics not in your mind?
Not really in my mind, I would say. I remember meeting Brian Mulrooney and his wife Mila Mulrooney at the Aurelia Square Mall back when I was a kid, and it was funny seeing the crowd following at the time the Prime Minister, I believe. Um, no, it's never been on my radar. I kind of got into politics, and politician is a bit of a pejorative, I think. Elected representatives seems a little bit of a better term, but. The Green Party here federally was looking for a candidate in 2019, and I was at the time I was a member of the federal Greens, and so I kind of inquired, hey, so what does it take to be a candidate? Because they were kind of late in the process of finding a candidate, and I went through that process, and I ended up being the federal Green candidate in 2019, and I did okay, even though I lost, and so that was my first foray into politics. Yeah.
So then what made you turn your attention to municipal politics? Was it that background of being a volunteer firefighter, or was there some other issue going on in Parksville at the time that you said it's time for Sean's voice to be at that council table?
Sure. Well, Chris, I feel like we are all learning all the time. And, I was kind of baptized by fire in running for federal politics, and I knew nothing about politics at the time. But after doing 9 in-person debates all over the riding, which is a huge riding, 8,000 square kilometers, I quickly had to learn a little bit about federal politics, provincial politics, local government politics, who does what, jurisdictions, etc. And at the time, I thought, hey, federal politics, that is the biggest and coolest. I wouldn't want to be a local government elected official. That seems like small potatoes. No. Uh, and after I lost federally, I learned a lot about politics in general, jurisdictions, different orders of government. And I wanted to run locally because it has the most direct impact on our community. And um, and now being in it for a couple of years, I feel that it is the most honest order of government because we don't run deficits at local government. If we are going to borrow, we have to go to a referendum or an alternative approval process. We raise our hands and raise the property taxes to pay for the services that we need. Our decisions are in open, minus some closed sessions due to, land, legal, or labor. Um, and we don't make decisions as a caucus behind closed doors. We don't run deficits. And for that reason, I feel it's the most honest order of government and the front lines. And I really have appreciated the last couple of years, and I look forward to the next couple of years at local government.
Playing a little devil's advocate with you for a second, if you don't mind,
Sure.
Sean, but would you say
No, go for
residents
it.
would agree in that statement? That local government is the most honest because you are the government of proximity, to quote Scott Pierce, former president of FCM. When you are the closest to the people, so the decisions you make, the people should know about. I say that with a caveat, knowing that I'm going to ask a follow-up question here. Would you say that people assume that what's going on at City Hall is the truthful level of government, or is it that aura of one politician's the same as another politician?
Oh, people are going to have their ideas, and some people's minds you're never going to change. Um, I know MPs, I know MLAs, and I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm saying the structure that we're dealing with,
Okay.
not running deficits at the local level, going to the public to borrow the money, approving the budgets each year, the financial plan, and looking the taxpayer in the eye and raising your hand to raise the property taxes to pay for stuff has little to do with the people involved, less to do with the people involved, and more to do with just how the structures are set up between provincial, federal, and local government levels.
But there's become a blurring of the jurisdictional line, though, I would
Hmm.
imagine, across
Sure.
Canada, because, and this is a unique question for you because you've ran both federally and now municipally as well. When
Hmm.
you were out on the doorstep, when you were talking to voters, were they specifically talking about the jurisdictional role that you were running for? So when you were running federally, did they talk only about federal issues, or do you get a sense that if you're a politician, you come to my door, I'm going to talk to you about federal, provincial, school board, whatever level of government issue I have to you because you're standing in front of me.
Of course. And people have frustrations just in general with government. And so, back to your politician name, if you're a politician, well, here's my complaints about politics. Here's my complaints about how things are run. People are busy paying their bills, getting their kids off to school, fixing their car to make sure that they can get to work. That's what they're busy with. They do not have time to figure out whose jurisdiction is what, who are the good, politicians and who are the bad politicians. They have complaints that they see. And when you are an elected representative and you show up at their door, they're going to let you know all of their problems and they don't care about the jurisdiction. That's not their problem, actually. Sure, a little bit more education would be handy for the public, but I completely understand why people are frustrated with government in general. And part of any order of elected representative is to kind of eat the crap sandwich that you're going to get from complaints from the public. That's just part of the job.
You, to flip the question a little bit, though, is it that they don't care or are they just so I don't want to say disconcerted or discombobulated, but we are seeing the federal, the provincial governments downloading a lot of responsibilities onto other levels of government. The feds pass it to the province passes it to the municipality. So, even as a keen observer myself of municipal politics, I would be hard pressed to tell you that policing is strictly a provincial issue or a federal issue. I would be hard pressed to say healthcare is strictly a provincial issue. Municipalities are picking up so much of the responsibilities because if they don't, who will. How do you get people to understand that the municipality has a role to play when the province and the federal government seem to just are happy with the fact that they will download it onto other levels of
Mm,
government because they will pass the buck?
sure. Um, I probably won't get through the interview, Chris, without mentioning the old saying that the federal government has all the money, the provincial government has all the power, and the local government has all the problems, right? And so, while the city of Parksville has a contract with the RCMP, we are somewhat responsible for policing. For instance, if we're going to, choose policing, how much control we have over the RCMP and our detachment, I would say not much. Our staff sergeant is fantastic, and we have great people. But say bail reform, when you have the premier of BC and other premiers across the province asking for bail reform from the federal government, the general public knows that RCMP are on a contract with the city of Parksville, but you know, their attention span can't get into the weeds as to responsible for bail reform. And even I don't understand, why we can't fix some of those things. And it is beyond my control. And especially when premiers are asking for something, you're wondering why the feds don't do it. So I totally understand that responsibilities are being offloaded to local government. Um, and I understand why people are so frustrated with why can't this happen? Why can't this happen? And the jurisdictional lines do get blurred, to your point, Chris. I would say offloading or downloading, I don't really like that term, but I think it happens more and more, and it'll continue like that. And so I'm here on the front lines along with every other councillor and mayor and regional district director and whatever you call people who work in counties. Um, we get dumped on, and we do our best to roll with it. We do our best to advocate with, say, our provincial UBCM and whatever it is called in Alberta and across the rest of the country. In FCM, we do our best to advocate, and that's our job.
How do we fix it? Because I think because anytime I speak to a municipal leader, they always tell me that if you have an issue, whenever they talk to a resident who has an issue, they say, if you have an issue, come to me with a solution. What is the solution? Because it doesn't seem like the provinces don't want to stop this offloading of responsibilities to the province. In Ontario, we're seeing some uploading of responsibilities from the municipal jurisdiction into the provincial.
Oh,
Bike lanes being particularly concerned because Doug Ford
sure.
has said we don't want the bike lanes in downtown Toronto, so we're going to remove them, and we're going to force the municipality to do that. What what do municipalities need to do to ensure that they're not holding all the issues and maybe the province has to
Sure.
hold some of the issues?
Sure. So 2 points I would make. And one, Chris, I would think that your podcast and kind of maybe helping, broadcast the issue a little bit as to the issues that local government has. I think you are part of the solution to this because um, in the old days, maybe there were just newspapers before even television, and whatever the newspapers guys print with their barrels of ink, that's what the public is going to consume. And now, with the advent of the internet and podcasts, et cetera, that media world changes, and so does the messages that can get to people, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, et cetera. So I think that's part of the solution is allowing some transparency and shine a light on stuff. Um, the other thing I would mention is that Parksville was one of the few cities who successfully pushed back against some short-term rental legislation that were pushed on by the province. And I'm actually not a huge fan of short-term rentals because if it takes long-term rentals out of the market, where do you want people who can't afford to buy something in an ever increasingly expensive real estate market, where do you want them to live? So short-term rentals are okay, but if they're cannibalizing those long-term rentals, then that's an issue. So I totally understand where the province is coming from. Parksville advocated through our MLA, through some neighborhood association groups, through our elected officials, respectfully pushed back. Our planning department in City of Parksville spoke with provincial staff so they understood that we had a zone in Parksville that was dedicated, built for short-term rentals on Resort Drive. And once the province understood our case, which we brought respectfully, we were granted an exemption from that. And so to me, that's a really great case of advocating respectfully, um, and pushing back a little bit on stuff that's being offloaded or downloaded.
I'm gonna if I was to speak to an MLA or a provincial premier today, and I would ask the question of why are you offloading so many responsibilities onto the municipalities, I will hazard a massive bet right here, right now, that they will say every community has their unique challenges and needs, and we do not want to dictate and paint a broad stroke across all municipalities. The issues that are going on in Parksville may be completely different than what are going on in Prince George, may be different
Sure.
in Fruitvale. So, how do you tell the province that you can't continue to download when they're saying, well, you know what's going on in your community. You are the front lines to the people and the issues that are going on. So you need to be able to stand up and say, this is where the money should go, because we in Victoria may not know exactly where it should go.
Sure. I haven't seen that in my 2 years, Chris, of money being offered and us being able to designate where it goes. We did get a grant. BC did hand out $1 billion to all the local governments 2 years ago. So that is an exception. But if only, Chris, that was what was happening is, hey, we're going to give you the money to spend as wisely as we can already see all the budgets and financial plans that you've already responsibly, looking the voters in the face or taxpayers in the face. We have a good record. How is our credit rating with the municipal loaning agency, the finance authority? It's good. So you can give us money and we will spend it wisely. That is what we do. We don't run deficits, et cetera, et cetera. I'll go back to that. So I don't see that being the case, that we are given custom solutions to problems. What I see is federal and provincial governments, and again, I'm not saying this against the people, I'm just saying it against the system. Um, they react to kind of political situations, and there's a sweeping wide brush that is applied, and that definitely does not fit everybody. Um, and it saves the provincial or federal governments from doing the work, doing the consultation, listening to that consultation, and applying custom solutions to, say, Prince George or City of Parksville. I don't see that happening very much. And maybe you have some examples in your mind where those custom solutions are being handed down from the different orders of government, and we
Oh,
can talk about those, but that's not what
the
I
only
see.
reason I say that is because I was just in Manitoba, where Premier Wab
Mhm.
Kinew just announced
Yeah,
$62 million over 5 years to municipalities for operating. No strings attached, do with what as you please, based on GDP. So that's why
fantastic.
but when I talked to the people in Winnipeg, they were not happy because it's just not enough. Because when you look at the distribution by population and the people size, more of the smaller rural communities are getting disinfected by that because the larger municipalities will take up a lot more of the money compared to all the other areas of the province.
Sure. And so, when you're handing out, say, a one-time grant like Wob Canoe is doing, Premier Canoe, um, you have to have some sort of formula for handing
Yeah.
the money out. And I don't know what that formula is that they used there. Here, when the government of BC handed out $1 billion, there was a special formula, and it wasn't just per capita. There were a few other bits to the formula. Um, and maybe the rural communities are not happy with the small amount they get compared to a larger city. But the larger city also has way bigger bills to pay, infrastructure, policing. The city of Vancouver pays $400 million for their policing contract, I believe. I believe the city of Vancouver's budget is $2 billion. So when you talk about the bigger cities, they have bigger problems, bigger bills, bigger financial plans. And yeah, the rural communities may not like the smallish amount, but there is a formula there. And when those grants are handed out, there has to be some sort of formula in order to, divide it equitably.
Understandable. Um, as someone who's sat on the board of UBCM, who is a counselor, who's also director for the regional board as well in your area, and this might be the most political question I asked during this interview, so I apologize if it comes
Sure,
out of
go
left
for it.
field, but
No, let's do it.
do you feel like Premier Eby treats municipalities like equal levels of government, or do they treat municipalities like children and will give you what you need and just go away and be happy with it?
Well, I chatted with the premier a couple of times. Maybe he would recognize me when we chat. But from my understanding, every local government is a child of the provincial government, whether it's BC or another province. Um,
But just
and
don't tell
that is
municipal
the
leaders that, because municipal leaders will like blow their gasket if you say that out loud.
that is the situation that we deal with every day. And from my understanding, we're not even a recognized order of government as because we are a child of the province. So, um, Premier Eby is dealing with things at a provincial level, and how, I'm not at that level to make those decisions. Would I make the same decisions? I don't have to wear that heavy crown that he wears, and he's not a king, but that heavy is the head that makes those decisions. Heavy is the crown. So, um, I think they have to make some tough decisions. Do I think there could be some more customized decisions and a little bit more consultation that goes on with the local governments? Yes. Should local governments have more advocacy and be a bit of a louder voice through whether it's UBCM or FCM? Yes. Um, and that's just the structure that we have. I appreciate the times I have chatted with Premier Eby. I think he is a caring, smart guy. Um, and I don't know what else I can kind of add to that.
No,
If you want to dig a bit deeper, we can.
no, I want to be some cautious of time here, and I want to flip the
Sure.
script a little bit here because you have to wear that crown when you make the decisions around your
Hmm.
council tables. And those are
True.
very tough decisions. Just like the premier has to make, you have to make some very tough decisions. How do you
Hmm.
make the tough decisions? As an individual councillor, what are the metrics that you put into place to make sure that you are making the best decision for your community that is going to impact the most people, but not negatively impact them?
Sure. So, Chris, when I ran for local government, I didn't run on, let's build a pool, an aquatic center, let's build a new fire hall, let's not do this or let's do this. My one platform plank, if you want to call it, was just to treat each other with respect around the table. And I watch a lot of council meetings, which is weird, and don't tell anyone that I do that because it is not something I talk about at parties. Um, but I see a lot of disrespect around the table, and I don't think it's a great way to come to good decisions. And so, um, at when I am sitting around the table at the city of Parksville, at Regional District of Nanaimo, I try to do my very best to treat everyone with respect, and I like to let everyone speak first. And I'm talking a lot on this podcast with you, but at the table, if you watch my videos, I actually don't speak very much because I like to hear everyone's perspective because there is no way that I know uh, all of their perspectives before I hear them. And I try to speak last every time, and I only speak if I think that something's been missed or I still want to add something. Meetings are expensive to have. I'm not there to ramble, and I think that is the reason why there are multiple people involved in decision-making processes because you need that respectful discussion and those different perspectives to come out with a great decision. And so my formula is really simple: kind of speak last, listen to everyone's perspective, treat everyone with respect. And I think that is the foundation of coming up with good decision making, whether at any order of government.
So that's a perfect world, but we all know that municipal politicians right now are being attacked. And I say that respectfully because there are social media attacks. 100% of the people that in your community will never agree wholeheartedly with
Oh
every
no.
vote that you make. And you've
Oh
probably
yeah.
seen the keyboard warriors. So, how do you
Oh yeah.
respectfully do your job when you know that people will just vehemently disagree with you and you still have to represent them because you're not elected just by the people who vote for you, but you're elected to represent
Mhm.
everyone?
Sure. There's always you're never going to please everyone, no matter what. Um, I have found that people who are typing stuff, especially disrespectful stuff on social media, it's funny enough, they're not the ones to reach out for and go for a coffee. or even talk on the phone. And so my instant go-to is like, if you're the kind of person who's going to be disrespectful on social media behind a keyboard, in a dark room, and you won't reach out to actually speak to people, how much influence does that person actually have in the community? Because from my understanding, people don't like being treated like that. So if you have pull, but you treat people like that online and you don't even reach out to speak to someone in person, I just don't think that you have the influence on your community that you might think you have if you're those keyboard warriors. So I can't please everyone. There's always going to be people who are complaining about this or that. And the decisions I make at the table, obviously I'm not perfect, but I should be able to defend the votes that I make at the table.
Do you welcome those tough conversations? Because I can imagine more people will voice their concerns with you if they disagree with you rather than they agree with you, because there's probably a large apathy in well, I noticed that as long as my taxes are paid and my garbage is picked up, I'm happy. I'm good. Do
Yeah.
what you need to do. But if you make a controversial decision in their mind, they will probably voice their
Mhm.
concerns. Will you try to engage with those people to ensure that they understand where you're coming from?
Yeah. Um, Politics is not the job for someone who doesn't want to have the tough conversations and hides. That this is not the job for you. This is not the job for you if you have thin skin. Um, the job of being an elected representative is you have to eat the crap sandwich sometimes. And you have to have those tough conversations. And again, those are the ones where it's really going to test your strength on being able to have a tough conversation respectfully. It's easy to have a respectful conversation when you're in agreement. The time that you're going to exercise your skills about when being able to have those tough conversations is when you're not in agreement. And so, it's one thing to say, hey, I like having respectful conversations, but I understand that it's the tough ones that I'm not going to run from. And it's the tough ones that are going to test me being able to have a respectful discussion about it.
How often do you
Yeah,
find that
that's the
people just
job.
want to be heard, though? Because most of the time, people who are frustrated just want to be heard that
Oh,
their
yeah.
concerns are being heard.
I've met people for coffee, and we still left our coffee meeting, and I still don't agree with their perspective, and they don't agree with my perspective, but I just let them talk. And I didn't even really say anything through the whole thing. I just let them chat. And they were like, Sean, thank you so much for making time for me for a coffee. And I'm like, no problem, anytime. And they know that they didn't win me over, but they're impressed that I just kind of met them for a coffee and chatted with them. They love that. And so a lot of the time, people, to your point, Chris, they just want to be heard. And that is also part of this job for sure.
I want to turn to the city of Parksville as a whole now, and I want to start with the city, and then we'll go to the region for a second. But before I
Sure.
start this line of questions in this segment, I have to preface it by saying this is a conversation between the counselor and myself. This is not a motion of council, not a direction of council, not a policy of council. This is the counselor's opinion and his opinion alone. He needs a majority of votes on council to pass anything. So it may line up, but at the end of the day, still his opinion. So he's not speaking on
Sure.
behalf of the city of Parksville. So, counselor,
Yes, that's right.
in your opinion, what do you believe is the biggest issue or challenge facing the city of Parksville today, as of recording this at the end of November?
Sure. I mean, as always with any local government, there's lots of issues. I think financing infrastructure, financing policing with a regressive means of raising the money, which is property tax. I feel that is the toughest thing to do because I say regressive because property taxes are not based on income. They're kind of based on unrealized gains. And that is local government's main way to raise money. Sometimes you have you sometimes you have traffic tickets or parking tickets and things like that. But for the most part, paying for aging infrastructure for delivering water or sewer with 60-year-old pipes that might have asbestos in them, with skyrocketing infrastructure costs, is going to affect people's property taxes so much that they may not be able to afford to stay in their home as they see those property taxes come in year over year. And so that is why, both at the provincial and federal levels, local governments are asking for a better way to pay for the 60% of infrastructure that local governments are responsible for, yet we only collect 10 to 12% of the taxes across the whole country, while the provincial and federal governments collect the other, say, 45% each. So that is, to me, the largest issue that we have, and that is specific to the city of Parksville, but also in a general sense.
I hear Carol Sabb and Rebecca Bly just singing
Yes,
praises right now because
yes,
you're talking their
yes,
language.
yes. But the reason I'm talking their language is because that, it's the objectively correct answer. And so, of course, well, I agree with them or they agree with me. Anyways, we're in agreement for sure.
So what do we do in the short term then? Because that's the $1 million question. Because I hate to break the bad news to at the people at FCM and every provincial municipal organization out there right now. We are in a political tumultuous time right now. No one wants to
Hmm.
seem to want to sit down at the table and have this hard conversation for a new
Hmm.
framework for municipalities. So, what
Hmm.
does the city of Parksville, what do you have to do as a council, as a councillor, to address this issue and not do it on the backs of the people who are there?
Sure. Um, Part of my job, Chris, is chatting with you today. Part of my job is thanking you for helping to shine a little bit of a light on this issue. Part of my job, and it's in our strategic plan, both at the City of Parksville and at the Regional District of Nanaimo, is advocacy. So part of my job was running for director at UBCM. Part of my job is sitting on committees with FCM, and I'll be in Ottawa next week, and we'll be in offices of MPs there, and we'll be doing that work that Carol Saab and Rebecca Bly want us to do. And so advocacy, while still doing a good job in balancing stuff with our own financial plan at the City of Parksville and the Regional District of Nanaimo, advocacy is a huge part of our job. And I made sure that I voiced my opinion when we're doing our strategic plan, both at the City of Parksville and the Regional District of Nanaimo, to make sure that advocacy is on those strategic plans. And that is, hey, over here, this may not be working as well as it could. So, hey, could we all sit around and talk about it, please? You guys are collecting more of the taxes. We're spending them very wisely, and we collect very little amount of the taxes in a regressive means. And so, advocacy, if there's a better answer, Chris, than advocacy, which includes me chatting with you today, I am all ears. And so is Rebecca, and so is Carol,
Would you say
and
this
Trish.
the and Trish, that's right. Would you say the issue of funding, properly funding municipalities is this big challenge for the regional district of Nanaimo as well, or is it just one that's across this country? Because when I speak to municipal leaders, it's not
Mhm.
always the first thing that comes up. And I'm talking about the smaller communities to the largest cities. It's not the first thing they talk about. They talk about housing, they talk about crime, they talk about homelessness, and then they talk about funding. So they talk about three big things first, which housing does fall under that infrastructure, under that financing, because literally, as Scott Pierce would say, I don't want to build a house. I'm a mayor. You do not want me to build a house. You want me to build the
Mhm.
pipes that go to the house, not the house itself. So, would you say the
Mhm.
regional district of Nanaimo is in the same circumstance that the city of Parksville is?
Sure, regional districts and counties are in a little bit different situation. You know, for the city of Parksville, yeah, crime is an issue and policing, but as we get closer to 15,000 population here in the city of Parksville, Chris, our property taxes are going to have about a 5% jump just to pay for the increased share, because right now we only pay 70% of our policing contract. And when we get to 15,000, we're going to be paying 90% of that RCMP contract. And just that jump will be 5% of the property taxes the year that our census says that we hit that. For housing, if we are going to do some non-market housing, then it's going to probably take permissive tax exemptions, which costs the Parksville taxpayers. It might take our city planners to waive their fees that they would usually charge a developer. And so all of this stuff does cost the taxpayers, whether it's policing, whether it's housing. Homelessness and mental health has a massive impact on both policing bylaw costs, all of that stuff. So yes, those issues are huge, and they are kind of the top issues that local governments are dealing with. But in the end, it all comes down to being able to pay for those permissive tax exemptions or the policing or the bylaw enforcement or all of that stuff. It always comes and or say fire as well. We have an amazing volunteer fire department here in Parksville, but as we grow and as volunteers are become more scarce and more scarce because they can't take time off of work to volunteer their time, then we will hire more firefighters, and that gets expensive too. So to me, it always comes back down to being able to pay for stuff, and that's why FCM, UBCM, or we're usually, that's the main goal is to have our hand out and ask for more ways to pay for stuff instead of just regressive property taxes.
Are you hopeful that it can be done?
I don't give up. I don't quit. And when we had the province of BC hand out $1 billion at the beginning of my term, to me that is our province saying, "Hey, our provincial budget had a little bit left over for whatever reason, and our local governments are dealing with all of the problems." Back to that old saying, and we're going to give them a little bit of money, and they can spend it in almost any way that they see fit. Not any way, but almost any way. There are a few caveats. And to me, that is, and I guess Wob Canoe just did the same thing. So to me, that is a little bit of the message. It's a little bit of a shining light that the message is getting through. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what comes out of FCM next week when you're after advocacy days in Ottawa. It's always interesting to hear
Sure. I
what
mean,
goes on.
it doesn't happen that fast. I mean, these are conversations that go on, and then there's the FCM convention, in the spring or whatever. So it always goes on. So yeah.
It does. I want to turn to the accomplishments because every municipality has its challenges, and if funding is the number one priority, I think every municipality is under that umbrella right now that
Yeah.
we need more
Hmm.
funding. What's the thing that Parksville, what's the thing that the regional district of Nanaimo does right? What is the thing that you look at and you say, you know what, we do have our funding challenges, but we're doing this right?
Yeah. For the city of Parksville, I really think that we have a quite a respectful table. You can watch our meetings. I don't think a lot of people watch our meetings because they're boring, and I actually think government should be boring. It shouldn't be dramatic. It shouldn't be, a leader of one party yelling at the leader of another party during question period. And I realize that part of that is theater, but part of that is not theater. Part of that is the taxpayers are paying for those salaries, and the taxpayers just want everything to be running smoothly. Whether or not those question periods at the provincial or federal levels actually contribute to things, well, that's definitely a different conversation that we can have. I do not feel they're that productive really, and I don't
Well, you're
think the
seeing that
taxpayers
creep,
think they're
you're
that
seeing
productive.
that creep into municipal politics, though. You were
Uh, in the city of
across
Parksville
no
meetings,
across
oh,
Canada.
okay.
No, I'm not saying I've watched yours. They're tame compared to
They're
some
boring.
that I've watched. I
Yes,
I
which I
don't
think they
find
should be.
see you're saying that they're boring to a guy who literally does municipal politics for like his living. So to me,
Yes,
boring is like watching a 5 hour golf round and going, what did I
sure,
just get from that? Watching
sure,
a
yeah,
7 hour budget deliberation, that's like my
yes.
Super Bowl.
Okay, okay. Um, yeah, so I think City of Parksville, I think if people do watch our meetings, they see that it's a respectful discussion, and I think we're doing it really, really well. And I think, like I said earlier, Chris, that's the foundation of good decision making. And so I
Yeah.
think the City of Parksville has made very good decisions in the last couple of years, and a lot of it has to do with that foundation. I don't mean to pick on any other local governments, but there are definitely local governments, especially in BC, where I watch their meetings and it is really hard to watch their meetings. And I think, I think the Kamloops mayor, I think there's room for him to improve how he deals with people. There's room for all of us to improve how we deal with people. But those are really hard to watch, Chris. And they are losing so much ground on a lot of their decision making and public trust and all of that stuff because of a lack of respectful discussion around the table. And so to me, I'm going to go back to that answer, Chris, because I think it's the foundation of good decision making.
Why do you think you do it so well in Parksville? Because respectfulness is a dying thing in this world right now. we don't want to sit down and have that respectful conversation with people we disagree with. But it seems like you have this magic sauce in Parksville that you're able to do it. And yes, you guys do disagree on certain issues during your council
Of course.
meetings, but it seems like what's left at the table, the moment you leave that council room, you're still friends. And you don't find that in some larger municipalities. And I know we're picking on, I'm not trying to name names, but you do see that there are municipalities who don't have that respect. What is the secret sauce that's going on in Parksville?
Um, Chris, I don't want to sit around a table with people who agree with me because that's not going to give you a well-balanced decision. What I want
Yeah.
is different opinions. Um, and when you have different opinions, you just talk through it, walk through it, listen respectfully, and you're going to come out to a better decision. If I surround myself around that table with people who are just going to agree with me, it's not going to be a good decision. It's going to be whatever I think from my perspective. Um, and I think yes, respectfulness is dying, and social media could be a part of it. Um, but I haven't given up on it, and that's why I always pivot and talk about having respectful discussion, even if you disagree. We can uh, we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable when we disagree. And that is the only way we are going to make progress in everything that we try to do as communities is to not be disagreeable when we disagree. And once people can get their head around that, we'll start making some really good progress. But if we're calling each other names and being defensive uh, and being disrespectful, you're eroding the foundation of good decision making.
What does the future of Parksville look like to you?
The future of Parksville, to me, looks like we have some of the most amazing beach and community park that we had. I think we had in 2024, we had 115,000 visitors to our sand sculpting competition, the quality food sand sculpting competition down at our beach. And so it's kind of like Vancouver Island and Parksville. The secret is out, Chris. We are getting busier and busier, and people are realizing how amazing it is to be here in the summertime. I'm speaking to you from the winter time, and people who live here, they think it's a little bit cold, but I didn't have to shovel my driveway today, Chris. So
Wow,
yeah,
shot across the
even in the
bow.
winter, it's pretty good.
So I read something on the city of Parksville's website, and I just want
Mhm.
to clarify this. Parksville has also been called Canada's Riviera with good reason. Few beaches outside Mexico and the Caribbean compared with our kilometers of near perfect sandy beaches. That's a
Mhm.
pretty big statement in itself. Would you stand by that?
Yeah, so Chris, when the tide goes out at our community park, um, I don't know how many baseball games you could have, baseball diamonds, deep towards the water. Our beach is gigantic. There are people who have, little tents and umbrellas and kids digging in the sand and they're getting their toes wet and they're walking way out just to get to the water because our beach is so huge. And in the summertime, our kids grew up here, and so I take them to the beach often. Huge playground for kids, a little splash park. Um, we have a kind of a new gathering area that has some shaded benches and stuff to hang out in. Amazing park. And I should be careful actually how much I pump it up here, Chris, because we were really busy this summer already. Yeah.
Where do you go after a long day of council meetings or a stressful day around the council table? Is there a spot in the community you can just go, decompress, recenter yourself?
I come home to my family, Chris. I think I have it on all my social media profiles, but being a good husband and a good dad to my kids is number one.
That I that is the
Yeah,
first wow. Do you think they're proud of you?
I hope so. Yeah,
Do you make decisions based on the future of your kids?
absolutely. Yeah. Chris, some people want a bunch of money. Some people want, I don't know, a new Ferrari. Some people want to travel the whole world, which, of course, traveling is pretty fun. But at the end of the day, if I didn't do a good job, with my family, then what was the point? Yeah.
I want to turn to my last question. It's actually two questions because you sit on two different councils. You sit on the regional district of Nanaimo and you sit on the city of
Yeah.
Parksville. So we'll start with the city of
Yeah.
Parksville. And the $1 million question for that one is, in your opinion, what makes the city of Parksville such a unique place to live, work, and raise a family?
Oh, I kind of like to call Vancouver Island, Chris, the Hawaii of Canada. Um, in Canada, we deal with a lot of weather. I grew up in Ontario. We had, it was pretty snowy and kind of wetter snow than you guys have typically in Calgary. Um, And so when people figure out, hey, it's pretty warm on the West Coast, and they get some rain, but it's gorgeous. I'm a big fan of Hawaii, but in Canada, the closest you can get to Hawaii is Vancouver Island. And Victoria is gorgeous and South Island is gorgeous. But if you come up a little bit to Mid-Island, you get to Parksville, Tofino, Ucluelet. There are some amazing places on Vancouver Island. And again, I don't want to pump it up too much because kind of like the secret would be out even more and we'll get even busier. Um, but it is, I didn't shovel my driveway, shot across the bow again. The weather is fantastic. I came out, Chris, in 1993 from Ontario to go snowboarding for one season. I came out for one season, and I'm still here in BC. Snowboarding, golf, people snowboard and ski, and then golf in the same day in this province. And so you have an amazing province within an amazing country, and then you have Vancouver Island, which is also on the coast. It's just it's just a gorgeous part of Canada to live. So yeah.
You could do that all in Calgary as well. It's just you're going to be in middle of 4 feet of snow going golfing, which I've seen. So
Yes, and don't get me wrong, my wife and I lived in Calgary for a couple of years, as you and I mentioned before, and I quite like Calgary. It is sunny. It could be negative 35 and it is sunny. And I loved my 2 years there. I think it rained for 30 minutes for the entire 2 years. I think it rained for 30 minutes. And Teresa and I went for a walk because we were amazed that it's actually raining. And we had, Gore-Tex or whatever we were wearing. But don't get me wrong. I have friends who are in Calgary and I like Calgary a lot too.
what about on the flip side? As I said, the $1 million question for the regional district of Nanaimo. What makes that a great place to live, work, and raise a family?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, Parksville is within the regional district of
Yeah.
Nanaimo. I think we have 170,000 people that live in the regional district of Nanaimo. That includes the city of Nanaimo. It includes the town of Qualicum Beach. It includes a little town called Lanceville, and then it includes electoral areas, which are kind of you know what they are, but they're kind of rural areas where you can get a little bit more land for a little bit less money. And so if you want to kind of live in a city, there's some cities you can live in. If you want to live in some rural areas, you can do that too. And that's the regional district of Nanaimo. Obviously, a lot of it is on the coast with the ocean and beaches and snorkeling and regional district of Nanaimo is amazing. People do get confused because there's the city of Nanaimo and the regional district of Nanaimo. Ideally, there's a name change somewhere in the future that people don't get too confused about it. But yeah, that's the regional district of Nanaimo.
Counselor, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sitting down. It's always a pleasure to speak to people who are passionate about municipal politics, and I learned so much from these conversations as I crisscross Canada and speak to large urban center councillors all the way to small rural municipality councillors. So thank you so
Mm.
much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself, talking about the city of Parksville, and talking about the regional district of Nanaimo. Much appreciated, man.
Sure. Hey, Chris, again, thank you so much for shining some light on local government issues that usually are pretty boring. And the average taxpayer and voter, they're too busy kind of just paying their bills to figure out what jurisdiction is what. And I think podcasts like yours really shine a light where it needs to be shone and gives local governments a voice. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another great episode of Cross Border Interviews. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button as we enter into our final 4 episodes of 2024. We're going to be taking a brief hiatus, and then we'll be back in January this year of 2025, talking to more municipal leaders from across this great country. So until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back with brand new episodes next week on Cross Border Interviews. Till then, everyone.